Today on Supernormalized, I have Andreas Anthony. Andreas is a yoga teacher, tantric practitioner that was leading what he would deem to be like a fairly sort of normal life, and he didn't believe that he himself could be a psychic being. Then one day he had a profound Kundalini awakening, which lasted many hours and blew his mind open to his psychic ability and his understanding of himself, his body, his authenticness in the world. Integrating all of that together, he helps other people to understand their connection to their body and the world. So this is a deep conversation about that, his understanding of sexuality, and how that can actually help us all to grow in authentic ways. On with the show. Looking at the statistics that I have for YouTube and for my podcast apps, I have a lot of listeners and viewers that aren't yet liked and subscribed. So if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. It's free. And if you're on a podcast app, please give me 5 stars. That'd be really cool. It helps other people find these great conversations too. Thank you. Welcome to Supernormalized, Andreas Anthony. Andreas, you've lived a life of discovering personal, authentic honesty.
I have.
That's why we're here today. So I'm really curious. Can you share the story of the pivotal night in your ex-boyfriend's apartment that marked the beginning of your spiritual journey?
I'm going straight into it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the conversation and also the keen insight you have into, a lot of what my journey has just been a journey about being real with myself and being truthful and letting that come through in what I do and in my work. Long story short, that night that you're describing was my psychic awakening. So I'm a practicing professional psychic, and that has certainly been a wild ride to come to a point where I feel grounded and really in alignment with that truth of myself to be able to say that. So that night was back. It was right in the pandemic, and we were sitting down to have some dinner, and so I'm a gay man. We were going to watch RuPaul's Drag Race, which is very cliched, but also great show. And I knew I had to meditate for some reason. I can't tell you why. I just had a knowing that I had to meditate. And so I turned to my partner. I said, look, I'm so sorry. I really need to meditate. And it was very much like an eye roll type thing. Like, here's Andreas with his spiritual stuff again, like in the middle of our dinner, having to meditate. So I did that. I sat down, I meditated, and eventually my head started going from side to side. And I didn't think it was intense as what my then partner said was really intense. I thought I was sort of just going like a little shake, but he was like, no, your head was going cray-cray. And what happened that night was I lost control of my body because my psychic channel activated, and I had two dragon energies, because a lot of my cosmic ancestry is dragon. And I had 2 dragon energies essentially take me on the roller coaster of a lifetime into my psychic awakening.
In this part of the episode, we actually talk about Andreas' understanding of his spirituality and psychic abilities and how that came about.
That was about 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the night. Was doing all kinds of things that night. I was coming in and out of my body. I was saying things in channel and I was really scared because I'd never done that before. I was divining water for some reason. I don't know why. I was doing light language. And by light language, I mean, I was basically screaming like a banshee at 11 p.m. in the middle of an apartment building in Brisbane. And my partner was really able to hold the space, but at the same time, he was very concerned.
Terrified, probably.
Yeah, he was sort of going in between, is this legit versus, is this a psychotic breakdown? Like, because there was no reason for it, it was so out of the blue. And he had done quite a lot of work it was sort of in like Reiki and in mediumship way when he was younger. So he had an idea, which was probably why he was able to hold the space. But it sounds kind of like cute and fun when you recount it like this. But in reality, I spent the next month completely, because I just had no idea how to integrate that experience. And as the universe does, it sent the right people in my path to help me actually understand what was happening. And basically what was happening, because we're years down the track now, is that I had a divine soul agreement to be awakened in that way in this lifetime. Now, I'd already had a spiritual awakening long before. It wasn't like I was just not spiritual. I was very spiritual. I was a yoga teacher. I was a tantric coach, all of these things. So I had done that stuff, but in no way was I wanting or trying to do the psychic work. If it was quite the opposite, it felt like that was so far away from me. And that was something that, I don't know, like Madame blah blah with a special crystal ball from, who knows where, fairyland, that's what they do. And I don't do that because I'm just an average person and I don't have access to those abilities because that's what special people have, which is completely false. I know now. And the integration period was just as intense. I was going to the doctors. I was getting brain scans. I thought that there was something wrong with my brain because it felt like I had an antenna on the side of my head, on the right side of my head for an entire year. It felt like that whole side of my head was beaming up to the sky. And as much as I had my spirit guides who are now in communication with me telling me, oh, it's fine, this is just part of the process. How are you meant? You can't really just trust that when you're this fledgling psychic. You're like, so I went and did all the scans, and of course they came back fine, and it was like just a byproduct of the awakening process. So now here we are, and now I do psychic readings regularly, and I'm a psychic development coach. And really, my lens is that I know that everyone, because this is what my team tell me, everyone is in this place of accessing and starting to open up to these, what we would describe as gifts, but they're not gifts. They're just abilities that we all have, like psychic work, for example, and we are starting to access them in a more tangible way and in a more everyday way. And that's going to continue to occur according to my team and what they tell me. So my lens point is, I didn't grow up as this psychic kid that turn my gifts off because I was too afraid. I didn't have access to any of that. I was just a normal kid, yeah? And my psychic work and abilities came in way after, in my 20s, my mid to late 20s. So what I really truly believe is that we are all in the stages of moving closer towards what I would describe as more of a fuller experience of being a human. It's that thing where they say all the time, we only use like 12% of our brain capacity or whatever that percentage is. So yeah, we're starting to access more of that other percent.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you think that all of the work that you were doing beforehand, just as a part of your sort of life and helping with other people as it was, do you think that maybe you were waking up your Kundalini and this was a Kundalini event?
You're so good. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. There was a Kundalini awakening as part of that experience. And during the experience, when I was out of the way and I was speaking with a voice that was mine but wasn't mine because I was in a full trance channel, my team was saying to me, the reason why you're a yoga teacher and you do weird movements with your spine, and the reason why you've been dabbling with sound healing and all of this stuff was because it was energetically preparing my physical and energetic body to have that experience.
Yeah. Just so everyone understands, this is what initiation looks like.
Yeah, big time. It looks like chaos.
Absolutely. And when you're in it, you think, oh my God, am I actually crazy?
Yes.
Right?
That's
but the
right.
thing is, you still have your observer, so you can actually step back and go, wait a minute, I'm actually still rational about this on some level, but this is happening anyway. Maybe I'm not nuts and this is all okay. And that's where we get to normalize all this stuff.
I love it. Yes, exactly that. Normalizing what is supernatural in a way.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to roll back a bit here. So how did growing up in a rural Australian town shape your understanding of spirituality, sexuality, and identity?
With a lot of conditioning, with a lot of shame,
Right, yeah.
So I grew up in rural Australia, southeast, in the Snowy Mountains region, if anyone's Aussie listening to this. So we're talking like Jindabyne area, if you know that area. And beautiful, beautiful place, and also still quite closed down spiritually. And certainly back when I was growing up there, being gay was just not really a thing that people wanted or embraced. So what I learned to do was to highlight the parts of me that people celebrated and diminish the parts of me that people didn't want to see or were uncomfortable by. So, for example, what that looked like was, I was a grade A student. I was the top of my class. Like, I was that nerdy kid because I hyperfixated on my academia because that was something that I was naturally good at and something that could win me some form of appreciation, say from my parents or from the community or what have you. And anything else outside of that, as I started getting older, we're talking a teenager now, I would turn it off. So, for example, I used to be a dancer. And I stopped doing that because gay people dancing, it's like I didn't want to give fuel to the fire of being bullied even more. And that's really sad in hindsight, yeah. And I actually just last year, I performed in a Christmas showcase tap dance recital, which was in my hometown, which was a huge full circle moment, And it's because I have been on this journey of unlearning all of that sticky stuff. What are the neighbors going to say? That mentality of what is everyone saying and thinking about me, and letting go of that, realizing that, well, I don't even know what they're saying about me. So does it really matter? And learning to stay in my authentic lane, because that always gets me to the best experiences. And I've just moved interstate as a result of that. And the world feels like it's opening up to me in ways that I'm shocked, flabbergasted, overjoyed.
Sounds like that you're coming out to the world in a different sort of way.
Yeah. There's been multiple coming outs.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to the next question. So you've experienced multiple coming outs. How did each one build upon the last to shape your personal growth?
I say it's like one of my returning phrases I say all the time is that coming out as spiritual was harder than coming out as gay, and coming out as psychic was harder than coming out as all the rest, because it was just greater niched down levels of black sheep, And I think the reason that I could come out as, hey, everyone, I'm a light worker that talks to galactic beings and angels, and feel in my feet when I say that, and rooted in the truth of that for me, without any sense of people pleasing or shaming around that, is because I went through that experience of having to own myself and my authenticity as a gay man. So it really has been this beautiful, like, soul-aligned journey.
Yeah.
And it's been terrifying and it's been challenging. And yeah, I say beautiful, but the reality on the ground was it's taken a lot of courage, and it's taken a lot of, I would say, assessment of, is it more risky to be truthful and come out again, or is it more risky to not?
That's a big question. It makes me think about myself when it comes to my abilities, my connection to spirit in all sorts of different ways. Over time, I learned that, just sometimes you just know when you're with people that some people are just going to go, that's different. And then you can just tell their brain switches off. So you just don't tell them, and you tell other people that get it.
Yeah, of course. And I do the same. Yeah. We're not going around with a sign, hi, my name's Andreas, I'm a psychic. Unless it was at a specific conference for specific people where that would be totally the case. Yeah. But if someone stops me down the street, because like I said, I've just moved. So everyone that I run into is like, what do you do? Did you move for work? And I'm like, no, I moved on an intuitive nudge and I'm a professional psychic. There's no holding back. What am I going to tell them, that I work at IGA? I don't. I am a professional psychic. So you have to be real about that, I believe.
Yeah,
But there
for sure.
has been a time where, especially when I was a tantric practitioner, I was beating around the bush, not being clear, not saying what it was. And yes, you assess kind of the level of an invitation and the capacity of somebody else to actually hold that and what the truth is. But at the same time, I do feel like there has to be it's a form of people pleasing in my opinion, you know, where it's like, I'm going to protect you so that I can protect myself from feeling rejected in some way. And that's really important to, you know, not put ourselves out in the really wrong context. But at the same time, I think there's a limit to that. And we do have to move in from our heart space and let our heart space shine out truthfully.
Yeah, yeah. What has been the most significant challenge you've faced in accepting your psychic abilities?
The most significant challenge. Oh, they're all super significant and challenging. But I think the biggest thing for me was owning it, as in not second guessing myself to the point of talking myself out of it. And it's a worthiness piece, I think. And when I coach people as well, it comes up again and again. It's, who am I to be a psychic? Because that's left for all of the special people or the people on TV or the celebrity psychics. And there's a healthy level of skepticism, which I think keeps you grounded as a psychic or a fledgling psychic or an intuitive that you need that, because otherwise you blow off into psychosis land. So that healthy level of skepticism keeps us grounded, observing, like you were saying before, we're watching ourselves. But if that tips over too far, we end up just squashing ourselves and going, I don't know. And especially at the beginning, when your abilities are emerging and you haven't practiced with them and you're learning how to work with them, it's very easy to say, that was challenging and hard and clunky. And so therefore, I'm not psychic, I'm just delusional. Or this isn't real. And the biggest challenge for me was overcoming the self-doubt and letting myself move forward from that inner knowing of what was taking place, and letting my guides as well, actually, when they were speaking to me, letting them actually hold truth, you know, like, okay, yeah, this isn't just crazy thoughts from my brain. This is real. So that's been significant for me, because it was years and years of growing in the confidence, which only comes from practice, time, journeying with yourself in that abilities. And it's like any skill, which sounds a little bit, I don't know, weird to say, but it is like any skill. And just like playing the piano, if you might be naturally gifted at playing piano, but you're still going to have to put in the hours to become amazing at playing piano. And psychic work or spiritual work is the same. But I do believe there's a false belief that we think, well, because it's spiritual and it's a natural ability, therefore it just should come in at 100% and you know exactly what to do. And it happens, but it's so far from the truth.
Yeah, that's so far from the truth.
But I do think we think that way. We go, oh, well, it's my gifts are open, so bing, I know what to do. No, where it's like emerging out of the hibernation, and you're like, oh, my eyes hurt. I don't even know what am I doing, you know?
So that leads me to the question then, what steps would you recommend for someone looking to tap into their own intuitive skills?
I'm tempted to just blurt out something, but I'm actually going to tune into my own team, if you're okay with that, just to see what they want to say.
Yeah, sure.
Because I feel like they'll have something interesting. So the first thing they're saying is to move from your heart center, to move from inside to out, rather than out to in. So I'm not surprised they've said this, because they do say this to me quite a lot. There's a misconception that in order to open your psychic abilities, you have to somehow zoom out of yourself. So you will go into your crown chakra or into your third eye chakra and sort of beam yourself away. So I'm going to open up to the universe and go beyond me to try and pull something from the void. I'm going to go beyond me to try and pull the angels down from wherever they are. The reality is that it's all you. It's all you. Nothing is outside of you. That's just a false illusion that we have because we are in a physical form. Now, I know that's like a full-blown spiritual concept, but if you just hang on with me here. The best way I found, and that my team are telling me, which is my spirit guide team, is to go into the heart, into the inner heart, into the portal that is the heart center, and go. You're going into your energetic, spiritual body, and from there you can connect into this fullness. But that fullness, the angels, the guides that you're pulling from, they don't exist on planet blah blah. You know, they're existing inside of you in the fullness of your soul capacity. So when I'm speaking to my guides right now, it's not like they're a different entity to me. They're just a bigger they're an expanded version of me, but they're still me. And it's like I'm like a laser beamed down petal of the flower, and they're the stem of the flower.
Right.
But there's also a flower bush as well. So it might feel like because I'm a petal and there's another petal next to me, that we're different petals. And so therefore, if I need to talk to that petal, I've got to scream over to that petal that's over there on that other flower. But actually, we're all from the same bush. We're one plant, man. So it makes sense, rather than trying to fill the void and scream across to the other petal on the other flower on the other side of the bush, to actually go straight down into the root, because that's where we come together. And that's what moving into the inner heart space is. And I know that as a concept, that could be quite ethereal to describe, but you know, that's why I do psychic development coaching and things. And that's what the second step is, to get support. That could be support from you. Listening to this podcast in a way is a support. It's context, it's permission, it's validity. And then there could be more hands-on support, whether that's me or somebody else that is providing some form of service, whether it's one-on-one coaching, which is what I do, or whether it's a YouTube video, what have you. Following your inner compass to feel who that right teacher could be, or guide or supporter, is a great way to be guided into your fullest expression. And I come back to, they're like nudging me back to the piano metaphor, they being my guides.
Sexuality in Tantra is something that we all don't actually consciously engage with, I think. And as a part of that story, to really get the most out of our sexual experiences authentically, you need to actually understand like the tantric element, which is like the connection to God within those experiences.
And it's the same thing. Like, you can learn to play piano now on, I don't know, learnpiano.com or whatever, and it can be this sort of independent practice. Or you can go old school and you can go to a teacher, like I did when I was learning to play piano, and then they can impart their knowledge and their skill set onto me, or onto you. So going it alone is tempting, but I would highly recommend you don't do that. It's not the vibe. It's going to be harder, and it's going to be full of confusion. And I think the missing piece of that is the validity, you know, like being able to share your story and your crazy days, nights, experiences over time. Because I know that most people don't have a safe place to be able to share those stories without feeling like they are crazy. I could go on, but I feel like those two are the biggest pieces.
That makes good sense. How do you integrate your background in yoga with your psychic work to help your clients?
Yoga is amazing because have you done much yoga? I'm curious.
I have done yoga. I wouldn't say I'm a frequent person right now, but I have done lots of frequent yoga in the past.
Yeah, awesome. So, you know, you would probably know from your own time dabbling with yoga that it's quite a full system, and it's breath work. We know it's movement. We know the postures are there, but it's breath work and it's meditation, and it's learning to work with energy and your breath. That is pranayama, working with energy in the breath work. So these are all parts of yoga. And I know that maybe if you go to like fancy pants class in the middle of Brisbane or something, it may only be touching base on a tiny bit of breath work and mainly movement, but the totality of the yoga practice is so much deeper than that. And that's what I utilize in my coaching, because as I was a practicing and am a practicing yoga teacher for, it's getting up to like 8 or 9 years now. And what I find so helpful is being able to use really tangible tool sets like breath work, for example, or like guided meditation, to be able to tune in. This is that tuning in to the heart space, tuning in to the inner quiet, opening up the vessel, just like we were describing with the Kundalini awakening experience. All of that goes hand in hand to start to open up those wider abilities. I also use yoga and I also use Tantra. So Tantra it's very similar, but I use the energetic side of Tantra to move into blockages. Especially there's a lot of blockages in the sacral chakra, in our sex center, creation center. So if anyone listening doesn't know much about that, you've got the 7 chakras, 7 energy set points along the spine of the body. And the one I'm talking about sits basically in the groin. So it's the seat of creation. It is the seat of creativity. It is the seat of sexuality. All of those things are tied in hand. And often blockages there in our creative center will then block off the third eye, which is the psychic center. So it's like you're not tapped into life force because you've got a block, a fear, a something there. So because I was a tantric facilitator as well for such a long time, I weave that all together when necessary and within the consent of the client and with what the client wants to explore to essentially, okay, let's look at what's getting in the way of opening up the channel here. Let's focus on what can promote opening up the channel. And if the channel's already open or opening, let's start to work with the actual guides themselves to accentuate that, to make that more natural as a process to them. So yeah, yoga is one of many tools that I utilize, but I love it because it's so tangible. It's really real. It's in your body, with your breath, with your movement, and that can be really grounding because a lot of the stuff we do in psychic work is like, it's in woo-woo town, it's intangible.
True. So turning to sexuality and Tantra, how has Tantra helped you heal sexual shame and what lessons can others learn from this practice?
Yeah, cool. Do you know much about Tantra?
I know a little, yeah.
Yeah. Would it be helpful to sort of explain Tantra a little bit?
Give it a bit of a framework so people understand where you're coming from there.
Okay, sure. So Tantra is really misunderstood for the most part because it's one of those spiritual lineages that have a lot of breadth and a lot of mystery. So Tantra, first and foremost, is about sacred relationship to the deity being source. Back in its original Indian context, that would be actual Hindu gods and goddesses. And essentially, you're looking at all the things that yoga has, so breath work, movements, and all of that, but you're also doing a lot of ritual. So a lot of prayer, a lot of chanting, mantra to the gods, to the deity. But the point of it is actually to go into your body and find God. Yeah, that's Tantra. And then we have, within some lineages of Tantra, they move into sex and sexuality as well because they don't turn their back on anything. Sometimes yoga will poo-poo sexuality and be like, nope, not my domain, I don't want to go there. Brahmacharya, if you follow yoga, there's these concepts of like almost purity, like purism. And Tantra's like, no, we're not about that. We're about going deep into the truth of all of the human experience, including sexuality, and we're finding God in there as well. So that's where you get a bit of that sexual mystery within Tantra. And some lineages take that further than others. Some lineages, they do almost no sexual work at all. And then you've got neo-Tantra, which is basically Tantra in Western countries. And you know what? That's what I teach, because I am in a Western country working with predominantly Western minds. So they actually do relate to neo-Tantra far more than they do to perhaps a more traditional Vedic Eastern tradition. So because there is so much sexuality wounding in this world, and I wish it wasn't, but it is, and it is my opinion that a lot of that is intentional, a lot of that is done to tie us away from our creative life force, and a lot of it is trauma, just recycling, through family lines and all the unfortunate ways that sexual trauma occurs. Even if you haven't had sexual trauma, you absolutely have likely been conditioned sexually just by being in the world with so much sexual influence and nuance and shame and religion, and be super sexual because it sells, and don't be sexual because it's shameful and sinful, and all of the messaging that goes on. That blocks us off. It confuses us from our life force, from connecting into the truth of our sexual energy in a way that feels genuinely uplifting and nourishing. So Tantra is a beautiful, sacred tool to start to gently work with these fears, hang-ups, shames, guilts, addictions, whatever it may be, that kind of ickily hangs on the side of our life, that sort of just sits over there, but actually has a huge impact on how we see ourselves, on our confidence, all of these pieces that are tied into our sexual energy. So if we can use something that is gentle, nourishing, invitational, non-threatening to open up and look at some of that wounding, look at some of that patterning, look at some of what is going on there. And that's where I use Tantra, the tools, breath work, energy work, sound healing, the mantra. Then we are accessing I would say, the biggest part of what can move the dial for people, but also it is the thing that most people don't touch. Most coaches, most teachers, they don't want to go there. And I get that, because it's scary to and maybe taboo to talk about people and talk about their sexuality when you're talking about spirituality. It's all like, can the two coexist? Yes, and they should. And it's not that it's sexualized. To heal and to move with and work with sexual energy is not to have to sexualize the process. It's not like that. But, to sum it up, I remember many years ago saying, I don't want to work with people half-assed. I want to work with people in their fullness, their full energetic body, root chakra all the way through to the crown. So I'm not going to skip over the sacral. And I think that's where the tantric work is a beautiful way to work with your fullness so that you can be in your fullness.
Yeah, well, the whole being is the only way to really connect with God, and goddess. I mean, I wish there's a better word, but it's all one. And without that being a part of you, you can't truly express yourself, right? You're not coming from the authentic place that you're talking about that you need to get to. And so, like you say, opening up the whole way is the way.
And it's a bit rebellious, isn't it? Because often in traditional spiritual practice, there's been the opposite. It's been turn off your sexuality and somehow become bigger and better than that and move beyond your sexual energy. I'm talking about like yogis in the cave type thing, or even traditional religion. There's this idea of your sexual energy is a sin. It is taking you away from God. It's taking you away from your fullness. I'm using God in a non-religious context. I'm using God to mean source consciousness. And if that is in the psyche, if that is running through the vessel, the body, the channel, no, it's the way that you then try and connect into a deeper aspect of you, it's going to be like deforming and warped, and it's not going to be able to move right down into the fullness of your channel. Am I perfect at this? Absolutely not. I've been deconditioning my own sexual trauma for 15 plus years, and every time I think I've found the next layer, there's another layer. And I'm like, how deep does this onion go, man? Like, I'm tired. And yet there's such a reverence in it, because the more we work with the sacral chakra, just like we would work with the heart chakra or the third eye chakra, like you said, the more of that totality of ourselves that we can access.
It offers a better interface to the world, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What is the spiritual role of sex, and how does it differ for LGBTQ plus people compared to heterosexual people?
Well, can you say the question again? I got like weirdly excited by the question and then just didn't listen.
Okay. All right, we'll do that again. What is the spiritual role of sex, and how does it differ for LGBTQ plus people compared to heterosexual people?
Okay. I'd be really interested, maybe once I've sort of said my piece, if you feel like sharing your perspective on this too, only if you feel comfortable, of course.
Sure.
The first thing I would say is that it's deeply individual to every person. There's no one size fits all. There's no one way is the right way. And even if we're talking about the LGBTQ community, you know, the way that I express this and the way I feel about this is not going to be the same as the guy next to me or the girl next to me, right? So the lie is that your sexual energy is somehow taking you away from your spirituality. I'm going to call that the lie. That is bad conditioning, in my opinion, okay? So I've already established that when we were talking in the previous answer. But the consequence of that lie is that you believe that part of you, part of the very energy that you were birthed from, sex energy, you wouldn't exist without it, is somehow anti-God and away from source. Just logically speaking, does that make sense?
Not in the least. Not in the least. There's a Victorian sensibility that needs to be abolished, really.
It's so illogical. And yet it's run our world when we talk about religious conditioning.
Absolutely.
And when we start to get curious about, well, what's on the other side of that? Like, what is in this gap between sex and spirit? And how can they come together? That is a really empowering journey. And for me, especially as somebody who's really dappled with Tantra and all of this, I see sex and sexuality as the most beautiful way to experience more of just my fullness, of who I am as a soul. And it's the equivalent of being in a really deep meditation and being like so zen and one with the universe. And if anyone listening has had those gleaming moments where you're like, oh, that was a deep one, you know, and it's like that, and it can be like that even in sex and sexuality. And yes, I have had experiences like that where I have felt like the petals of the flower and the bush and the stamen of the flower and the stem and the leaves. And that was a very tantric, you could say, or deeply spiritual sexual experience. And that's what really I'm seeking, you know. Maybe I'm an old soul or something and I'm like, I want something deeper, right, within my sex life. But it can be such a beautiful way to interact with another individual within their divinity as well. Because I feel like sex, and yes, I'm talking from a gay man's perspective, but sex has been stripped back to such a superficial aspect of what it truly can be. Yeah. And I do feel like this is likely the case for all humans, but it's especially the case in the LGBTQ plus community, where we're really obsessed with the body still. We're really obsessed with sexual attraction. We're really obsessed with sexual performance. Yeah. And all of those things are big things. They're important things. That's the baseline layer of our human sexual attraction. We need it. And it goes so much deeper than that. I think, and maybe this is controversial to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think that the divine feminine holds the softening of the heart required to allow us to access deeper aspects of our sexual energy that go beyond just the body, for example, that go beyond just desire. And especially in the gay male men who love men, well, that's an interesting sexual dynamic, isn't it? Because the divine feminine is there within everyone. We all got both, but there's no women that are holding that in terms of their physical body. And there's a lot of masculinity wounds and stuff within men. So we're all like, no, I can't be feminine because that makes me a sissy or whatever it is. So we kind of block the divine feminine within us. And I've seen the way that has kind of hypersexualized the community. It's hypersexualizing the gay male community. And it's like, oh, I can relate to everyone on that hypersexualized level, but I don't know how to relate to people from the heart, which is such a shame.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, a lot of the stereotypes are true, I would say, which does kind of feel like I'm backstabbing my community. But I do think it's true that a lot of gay men especially we don't know how to meet each other in a deeper way. And that's where I feel like the irony is that just as all people, there's so many people that can be quite spiritual, a lot of gay men are quite spiritual as well. And maybe that is a shock because, religion, we pushed away from religion and became atheists because religion hates gay people or LGBT people historically. But I haven't seen that. I've seen actually there's still a lot of queer humans out there that really want to explore their sexuality. And it doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, or otherwise. You are a soul being, yeah. So your sexual preference, it really doesn't impact that. It doesn't impact your ability to utilize the magic of sexuality and your sexual energy to essentially come closer to your full spirituality. And that doesn't even have to be in this tantric temple or something like that. It could just be in your own meditation practice, letting your focus go all the way up and all the way down, and into your sex center as well. So, and just being curious about that in a meditative place. So it is individual to everyone. Some people like me want to take it all the way into these like beautiful tantric sexual experiences. And other people might not want that and they don't have to want that. But I do think for all of us, it's so available to us. Literally my team are like nodding. They're like, yes. It's so available to us.
Yeah. Well, the bottom line is love, right? And it's expressing itself regardless of any of the opinions we put upon it.
There's this beautiful artist. His name is, I think it's Ziggy something. I really should know the full name. Australian artist. He's great. And he, in one of his lyrics, says, if love isn't expressed through us, then where does it go? And that really hit me. And I think it really softens and brings more yummy love into sex as an expression of love.
Are there spirits or divine beings that govern the LGBTQ community and sexuality? And can they work with traditional beings of sex and sexuality, or are they specific beings more aligned with LGBTQ experiences?
Oh, I love this question. I'm very aware that I didn't get to hear about your take on sex.
We'll circle back to that. So.
We'll circle back to that. Okay, so I've never, ever considered this question before. So
I thought you would have had connections with like beings in different levels, and I thought I better.
Not in the. I have worked with the ancestry of men who love men, but I've never worked with any beings specifically. So do you mind if I just open up and see?
Yeah, go for it.
Because I don't know off the top of my head. Cool. I'm so chuffed about this. This is interesting. I'm seeing a lot of pantheon that's coming through specifically. So, and there's no cultural lineage either. So what I've got is Isis, Hecate, Aphrodite, Ra. You see the flavor there. There's a lot of, it's pantheon stuff. It's gods, goddesses of antiquity that seem to be coming through a lot in that want to make themselves known to me about the answer to your question.
We might have to talk about this one at another time then once you've had some more contact.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I do, if I may say that what came through from my own team was that there's no one specific deity or god or being that you should be working with if you're curious about working with. So let's say you're an LGBTQ plus person listening to this and you're like, oh, I really feel the juice in that question. And it would be really nourishing for me to work with within my own abilities to connect with some sort of deity or being that supports me as a queer individual. Well, what I'm hearing from my team is that you can still just work with anyone, because none of them, when we're talking about angels, galactic beings, or guides, or pantheon, none of them are siloed in terms of their sexuality. They're so beyond that. You know, it's that any of them can work with you and will work with you. But I the reason that the pantheon came is because they're human. Their expression is human in a way. So if you take, for example, Isis, this Egyptian, deity, there's a humanism that the symbol, the form, the energy, there's a very tangible human aspect to that. So anything that was in a human body or that has been represented symbolically as human in some way, even if it's half human, half bird or whatever, they're powerful beings to work with around sexuality because they've been in a form. They've been in sexual form. If you move into the galactics, or the angels, they're not in tangible human physical bodies that experience sexuality in the way that we do. So their focus is less about the full true mechanics of human sexuality. And what you'll get from the angels is it's all love, baby, because they don't exist in any polarity. The sex it's not the same. It's already unified.
Okay. So circling back to my answer, that question.
Yeah.
So what is the spiritual role of sex and how does it differ compared to heterosexual people? I actually don't think it differs personally. I think that it's a matter of focusing on whatever, how could you say it? It's like when you tune into your sexuality, there is no barriers and you connect deeply to yourself and your body's needs. Sometimes your body's needs might be different to what you rationally think they are. And for the body to feel fulfilled. And when you are with a partner that understands that, it's just beauty and love is what is expressed.
Yeah, I hear you. There's such a beautiful surrender of the egoic need to control within that.
Yeah, absolutely. LGBT people are becoming more visible and open across the world. How do you feel there is a spiritual component to this cultural shift, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, I think you see a lot of this with the transgender issues that are taking place. And I want to be pretty categorical that transgender rights and issues aren't the same as just gay rights and issues. So we often just go, oh, it's one long acronym and they're all the same, but they're actually not. The experience of a transgender person is very different to the experience of me, who is a cisgendered gay man. So I'm just putting that out there that I am not transgender and I don't want to speak on behalf of that community. But what I can speak is my perspective of what I'm seeing. And I think it would be a potent discussion to utilize that to answer your question. But, there's a lot of polarity arguments and fighting about transgender issues right now and transgender rights. And I'm not going to say one is right or wrong, but energetically what's happening is, or spiritually, what's happening is we are moving further and further away from the gender binary, and I'm talking about spiritually, from the gender binary really describing who we are as an egoic individual. So what I mean by that is I'm a man and I'm a blokey man, and this means I have this role in life, this job in life, this is what the parameters that I must fit into, this is how I define myself. But also what that is you're defining yourself by what you're not. I am not a woman. I am not this. I am not that. I don't do that work. I don't wear those clothes. So therefore I am this thing. And what spirit is doing is it's taking us away from defining ourselves by what we're not. Because as I said in the beginning, we're everything. So if we are to truly understand and experience our soul fullness, our fifth dimensional, our sixth, the fullness of our soul, then at some point we're going to have to get over the gender hang-up thing. And that's really hard when you're in a physical, sexualized body that differs from the other sex in this world. It's almost like a boss level challenge to be able to be in a physical body that is polarized male for me, and to accept that the fullness of my soul is actually just non-polarized. It's male, female, and everything out and everything in between. Yeah, because it's a soul. And the transgender issue is actually, it's essentially bringing that to the forefront of our awareness. And transgender souls are brave ass souls that are doing the work to call it out, to make us go, hang on, how do we relate to gender? How do we want to relate to gender? Because if you're talking about the Andromedan Council, girl, they aren't gendered. They aren't, if I'm working with the Pleiadians, and actually Pleiadians are gendered, but if I'm working with the angelic soul or these high galactic beings, the way that they relate to gender is like not the same at all. And if we're talking about angel, like, okay, you've got Archangel Michael, who is a man, because we've decided that the energy signature of Archangel Michael is masculine. But actually, Archangel Michael is not in form. Archangel Michael is an angel soul. There's no gender.
Okay. Historically, nudity has been associated with spiritual practices such as magical rites performed by witches. Is there a spiritual aspect to nudity that modern society has overlooked or lost?
I'd be curious to see what your perspective of this is as well.
Do you want if I go first then?
I'd love that.
I think that the clothing aspect, I mean, to be honest, I'd love to run around nude all the time, but I'd get arrested.
Yeah, just maybe.
But I found being in, say, alternative communities in the past, whenever we've had nudity events, you just feel more free, right? And it's like the story that the clothing puts on you is gone. Yeah. And people are generally more respectful and more honest.
Yeah. It's the great equalizer, isn't it? Yeah, because if you're not wearing those clothes, then there's no way that you can sort of, this person has this much money or this person doesn't, or so for context, I'm the owner of Men's Nude Yoga Canberra. And although I live in the Sunshine Coast now, I still own that. And I have teachers that work for me back in Canberra. So I'm very well versed in being naked around other people in very compromised and vulnerable yoga poses. Anyone know Happy Baby? Well, imagine doing that naked. So I completely agree with you. We were born naked, and everything that we are wearing is an embellishment. Nothing that we're wearing is us. It's just embellishments. And at the end of the day, your body is always going to be naked. And animals are naked all the time, but we again, it's conditioning. We've got this conditioning and shame around our body, and sexualization as well. So I do see it as a great equalizer, and my experience has absolutely matched yours. That if I was going to some form of spiritual event and it was naked, then who cares if you're wearing the great mala beads from India and the beautiful shawl that's made out of, I don't know, Ethiopian something. All of these things that we it's almost like you can't hide. You can't create a character. It's just you. It's you with all of the body hair, all of the freckles, moles, warts, everything. And guess what? Everyone else in the room has the same things. And you realize how perfectly variable we are as human bodies, which just softens your experience of being in a body.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to it, the naked form.
Right.
What advice would you give to individuals hesitant about exploring their own spiritual or sexual identities?
I would say really move into the fear. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of being revealed to you or seen? And meet that fear with a very curious and loving heart. And if you need to, get support, get help from me, teachers, or just take those little leaps to push your comfort zone a little bit. I think a really fun example of this is, how they do like charity fun runs and fundraisers that are nude swim on the winter solstice in Hobart, or 5K naked to run, I don't know, around the bush, to raise money. These are really great ways that are very non-threatening, very fun, activity-based, human in nature ways that you can start to explore just even nudity, let alone sexuality. Because important part, just because it's nude doesn't mean it's sexual. Yeah. And that's a really important piece. Sorry, there's a dog out there doing its thing. I don't know what it's doing. Okay, it stopped. I reckon they're really great ways just to, go, just take a leap, take a little bit of a leap.
Excellent. All right. So we're coming towards the end of the podcast, Andreas. How would people find you?
Yeah, I'm on all of the things. So if you search for Andreas Embodiment, that's on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, I'll come up there, Andreas Embodiment. And if anyone's interested, I have a psychic protection guide. It's like a free guide that you can download, and it covers one of the biggest fears I see, which is I'm afraid that I'm going to get attacked by a demon or find an entity attachment in my spiritual exploration, and then that's going to ruin everything. And that's really scary. I get that. So I put everything I know in this free little PDF guide that people can grab off my website if they want some help with that.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll put that link down in the show notes. And I'll thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom, your understanding of Tantra, sexuality, and basically connecting to your heart and authentic life.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a really interesting chat, and you've thrown some great curveball questions my way, which was really cool. So I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, I'll just say goodbye to listeners. That was a great episode with Andreas. I really enjoyed everything that he shared about his understanding of spirituality, sexuality, psychic ability, and how that all interrelates. If you've enjoyed today's show, please reach out to Andreas on his website in the links in the show notes. And if you've enjoyed today's show, please like and subscribe. It's free. And also, if you're on a podcast app, give us 5 stars and share it to a friend. It'd be really appreciated. That way more people get to hear these good conversations. Thank you so much for listening. Until next episode, it's bye for now.